Hello and welcome. I'm glad you're here with us today because my guess is you've picked up IEPs before and you've read annual goals written there and you're like, what? What does this even mean? What are they talking about? Well, today's strategy session is going to be all about those annual goals in your child's IEP and why you want to make sure that you understand them and that they're really meaningful for your child, because so much of the services and supports are going to be based on those goals. So if we don't have good annual goals, we won't have a good IEP, which means your child will be losing out on those individualized services and supports they need. So today we're going to be learning a quick and easy way to figure out, one, is the goal measurable? And two, if you want to try your hand at writing a measurable goal, I've got a wonderful handy dandy template for you to use, and we'll be sharing that in our show today. So if you don't know me, I am Charmaine Thaner. I'm a retired teacher. I'm a parent. Now I'm an advocate and public speaker. And my passion is to help parents make sure that they understand their rights and responsibilities so they can be more effective advocates for their children, because we want to make sure that every child at school is safe, that they're happy in that environment, and that they're learning every day beside their peers in general education classrooms. So that's what I'm about, and hopefully you share that passion and that mission. And let's jump into our topic of the day, which is all about annual goals. So let me share my slide with you, and I'm going to bring up a typical goal that I often see when I go to IEP meetings. So today's all about those annual goals. And here's a sample goal. It says, Cameron will identify all the letters of the alphabet, the numerals 1 through 20, and the basic shapes. So, maybe at first reading, it's like, okay, that makes sense. They want him to learn his letters. Yep, that's a good goal. They want him to learn his numbers. Okay, I understand. And they want him to learn his basic shapes. So it's like, okay, sounds good to me. Well, if we look at this a little more closely, we really have 3 different goals kind of meshed all together here. So we have the goal of being able to identify letters. The second goal that's embedded here is to identify the numerals 1 through 20. And the third goal that they have written in this one giant goal is to identify basic shapes. So my first caution is, if you look at a goal and there's more than one skill in there that they want your child to be achieving, that's a red flag. A goal should only be for one skill. So that's our first problem with this goal. Our second concern with the goal is, does it really tell us what Cameron is going to be doing? So it says that Cameron will identify all the letters of the alphabet. Well, if I read this goal and I'm at an IEP meeting, one of the first clarifying questions I'm going to ask is, so what does identifying all the letters of the alphabet look like? And the teachers might kind of look at you like, are you crazy? It's like, we want the kid to know his letters. But there's different ways that a child can learn their letters and show you that they know their letters. And when you write a goal, it's supposed to be measurable. It's supposed to be specific. So we all understand what identifying letters will look like. So an additional follow-up question could be, well, are you talking about that they'll identify all the capital letters only, or that he has to be able to identify all the capital letters and all the small or the lowercase letters? So once that gets clarified, then you can say, great, let's change that in the IEP and make sure we clarify that. Now, the other part is the whole word identify. So there are a variety of ways that kids can identify things. So if you see this word in an IEP goal, you want to ask a clarifying question. So what does identify the letters look like? And again, the teacher might kind of look at you like, what do you mean? He tells me what the letters are. Well, he can verbally tell you, he could point to them, he could match them. What are you looking for? Are you going to show him a whole list of the alphabet and you're going to point to each letter and he has to tell you the name of the letter? Or are you going to show him flashcards one at a time and he has to tell you what the letter is? When you show him that list of alphabet letters, are they going to be in order? Because sometimes when the alphabet is in order and you want kids to tell you what the names are and you ask them in order, they kind of just go through that alphabet song. So they might not really be telling you the letter name unless they can see it in order, unless they can sing that song to themselves. So identify is a nebulous word in an IEP goal that you want to get more clarification. And once they clarify it at the IEP meeting, then you also want it rewritten. Because, if the speech therapist picks up the IEP and she goes, well, I wonder how, I can incorporate his speech and saying things with also what he's doing for reading. Well, if she sees identify all the letters, she doesn't know. I wonder, is he working on the letters in his name first? Is he going to work on capital letters first? What's that going to look like? So all of this, even though it might seem kind of like minute in too much detail, when you have an IEP, you want to be concerned with the details. So the first thing I would suggest with this goal is that the teacher breaks it into 3 different goals: a letter goal, a number goal, a shape goal. Again, with, just saying that the person will identify basic shapes, it's like, well, yeah, shapes are important, but what do you mean by basic shapes? Are you just talking circle, square, triangle? Are you, looking at, other kinds of shapes? So we want to be specific. That's our big goal. So let's look at another example. With paper and pencil, Maria will copy letters independently from a visual model with 90% accuracy and 4 out of 5 trials. Now, I can bet if you're watching this live or watching this on the replay, have you seen a goal like this? Type yes or no in the comments. Do you often see a number of like 80%, 90% accuracy? Type in yes or no. Do you see goals that say 4 out of 5 trials? Do you see things like that? Type in yes or no, and I'm going to check because I see we have some live viewers. And so Lee says, why are all 3 of those in one goals? They need to be separate. Exactly. And Lee's talking about this goal here. And I was actually at an IEP meeting yesterday, and everybody had squeezed in all these different things into one goal. It wasn't just the special ed teacher, the speech person. So it's not uncommon. For some reason, people want to kind of pack everything in and say, oh, we only have this many goals to work on, but they really need to be separated. And Kelly and Jen are here, and she said yes. Kelly says yes, they've seen goals like that. So let's look at our second sample here. And Lee also says, yes, that identify isn't a measurable behavior. So when parents see goals like this one for Maria to copy letters, and they see, it says, 90% accuracy, it says 4 out of 5 trials, this must be a measurable goal. And they're like, yay, our teacher wrote a measurable goal. Well, again, you have to look at this a little more carefully. So what I have is this handy dandy template that I think is really helpful for teachers, therapists, and parents to be familiar with. So what I did is, you'll see here we have the goal written, and that's the goal that we're going to look at. And we're going to look at, does this goal have all of these components? So does the goal talk about who is going to do it, what specifically they're going to do, with what materials, given how much time, with how much support? Does the goal say the degree of accuracy the student has to achieve it at? This is one that I add, and we'll talk about this in a few minutes, but I also want to see what environments that we want the child to be able to use this goal in. And like I said, we'll talk about that a little bit more. And then how many times, if the child just does it once, do we celebrate and say, yay, they mastered the goal? So to me, these are the components that you want to see in a well-written, measurable goal. And again, we want to make sure that the goals are individualized to your child, so they're not just something that a teacher takes from a computerized list of goals and, kind of plugs in your child's name. They really need to capture your child's unique needs and why we want this goal. So let's start here. So with this goal, does it say who? Yes, it says Maria. So yay, they have that box checked. Does it say what she will do? It says we'll copy letters. Now, that again can be defined a little bit more clearly, and that's where you could write or ask a clarifying question, and maybe even get this goal a little bit more clear on what does copying letters look like. If we look at the next part, it does say that she'll do it with paper and pencil. So, she's not typing or something. And it does also say that the other material that she'll have is a visual model. But, one of the things that I think can make this goal better is, to tell us what letters we're asking her to copy. Depending on the age of the child, it might be, you're first asking them to copy letters that will make up their first name. Or you're asking them to copy, uppercase capital letters. So this could be a little bit more specific there. But let's keep going on here. Does this goal tell us, how much time Marie is going to be given to copy the letters? And we just have question marks here because we don't know. The goal says with paper and pencil that she'll copy the letters independently with a visual model, with the accuracy and how many times. But it doesn't say, we want her to accomplish this within 10 minutes or, given, 5 minutes or whatever. So when there's not a time component, it's hard to know if the child takes, 45 minutes to copy 5 letters. Are we going to consider that, yes, she met the goal? Well, probably not. Most goals, we want kids to be able to do it pretty fluently. So the amount of time can be an important component that you want to see in the goal. And Lee also says that she's not sure about other professions, but we spent a lot of time in grad school writing behavioral measurable goals with all of these details, and I make the interns do the same. Yes, Lee, thank you. And what surprises me is that, we've been writing IEP goals for more than 40 years, and so many student, teachers still don't know how to do it. Teachers that graduate from college programs still aren't writing measurable goals. Teachers with years of experience sometimes aren't writing measurable goals. So it's like, yowie. But let's keep going with this example for Maria. So the other component is, do we know how much support Maria is going to get? And here in the goal, it does tell us that she's going to do it independently. Sometimes you might see in a goal that they'll get, no more than 2 verbal prompts to do it, or a physical prompt. So you want to know, is the teacher expecting her to do this totally by herself, just given the materials and she gets the direction, copy these letters? Can she do that independently? Because that's what it says in the goal. So that's how we're going to measure whether or not she has met the goal. The degree of accuracy. And yes, this says 90% accurate, so we've got that part covered. In what environments? And this is the part that, like I said, I've kind of added to what I consider a measurable goal. Because to me, there's a huge difference between a child being able to do something in a therapy room with a speech person or an OT or occupational therapist, and can that student do that in the general ed classroom? The other reason why I like to add the environment to the goal is it's my kind of sly way of slipping inclusion into the goals. So almost all of the goals that I suggest have a phrase in there where the student is going to be performing that in their general education classroom. And that will help you later at the end of your meeting when you're talking about least restrictive environment. And you can say, remember in the goal, we said that they would be doing this in the general ed classroom. So we need to make sure they get supports in the general ed classroom. And we're not saying that they're going to do this goal in a therapy room. So all of that kind of gets fleshed out in other parts of the IEP. But to me, you can start building in inclusion into your annual goals. So if this is something that you're liking and makes sense to you, give us some hearts and likes. And you can also click on the share button if you know some friends that would love this. Oh, you know what? Yeah. It says that the little box with my face is right under the red live box. If you slide it elsewhere, we'll be able to see your face. I know. And the problem is, I'm sorry, with this platform, I can't move it in another place. The good news is, if you watch the replay, then you can see my face. I'm sorry. Yeah. It's just like, yuck. Kelly says that she loves the template, so yay, Kelly. And that Jen also likes the template. Rebecca says that so much pushback from school teams to get this much detail in a goal. I've tried. They say they need them to be broad so they can be targeting across all settings or with a variety of supports and people. And yes, and I'll stop sharing here for a moment because then you can for sure see me. But so Rebecca's comment is something that I do hear a lot at IEP meetings. And it's like, wow, we don't want to be too specific because then that ties our hands as teachers or therapists. So we want it to be more broad. Well, guess what? When you write annual goals, they're supposed to be specific. So that's the opposite of broad. They're supposed to be measurable. So that's the opposite of broad. And So teachers need to know that there are going to be a lot of skills and a lot of things that they work on with students that might not even be captured as IEP goals. And that's good because we want, that rich environment of learning a lot of things. But when it comes to a measurable goal that we're going to be responsible for keeping objective data on and progress monitoring, it has to be specific. A broad goal is not going to do it. So, if you anticipate that you're going to get pushback and that typically if you ever bring it up at an IEP meeting and they keep giving you the line of, well, we don't want it to tie our hands, we need it to be broad, I would have a conversation with that teacher or therapist ahead of time. Or you might want to have a conversation with the special education director for the district, because to me, this is a concern that if most teachers in the district, most therapists in the district are writing broad general goals, then that's a huge red flag, and the special ed director needs to be made aware of that. So I understand that they want to have flexibility, and so I would start by saying, I understand as a teacher, as a speech therapist, you want to have that flexibility to do with what works with the child. And believe me, throughout the day, you have that flexibility. But when it comes to figuring out if a child has really achieved any progress on these goals, if they're not specific, people can be measuring them in all kinds of different ways, and you'll come up with all kinds of different results of whether or not your child's making any progress. So I know it's frustrating because I know it's like, wow, that's great, Charmaine, you're telling me to go and be specific, but guess what? That doesn't work in my district. So one of my advocacy mantras is what we accept continues. So if we continue to accept general, broad IEP goals, that's what you'll get. If you've tried talking with the people, during the meeting or before the IEP meeting, and you're still not getting anywhere, then that's a sign, okay, I tried that didn't work, I got to do something else. So that's when maybe you go up another rung on the ladder and you talk to the special ed director. But Rebecca, I'd love to brainstorm some more ideas with you. So let's make sure we keep that conversation going. And Lee had a comment back to, I know, Kelly's happy that she can see my face now. Lee says, Rebecca, that's a cop-out. They don't have to be responsible if there is less detail. And if part of the goal is to have varied environments and partners, then that should be in the goal also, which means more detail, not less. And maybe that's why I I enjoy reading IEPs and analyzing them, because I'm a real detailed person. So that can be one of the things that you look at as a parent. If all of this is still kind of like, a foreign language, and special ed has its own kind of jargon and language, find a friend that's more of a detailed oriented person. Find an advocate that is a detailed oriented person, because when you're working with annual goals, you really need to have that detail, and that's where you're going to be more successful. So Erica says, yes, I think she agrees that I'm a detailed person. I've worked with Erica, and she knows how. I ask lots of questions at IEP meetings and make sure that we're all on the same page. So let's go back to sharing my screen. And if you're watching me live, my face will be covered up by that live button. If you watch the replay, you can see my face. So in this example with Maria, we don't know what environment she's going to do it. And we do know that the expectation is that she can do this if we give her 5 chances to do this, 4 out of the 5 times, she'll be 90% accurate, and we would consider that being successful. So this template, I'm trying to think, I could make it as a PDF. So if you'd like to get the template for annual goals, just write the word template into the comment box, and I can send you a link, and I'll make a PDF of this so you can have it. So when we look at goals, if we see numbers in the goals, that doesn't mean it's a measurable goal. So don't get tricked by that. I think that's one of the things that sometimes parents feel like, oh, they've got numbers, it must be a measurable goal. And if you use our handy dandy template, you'll find out that that's not always the case. So what if, by chance, you would like to suggest a goal for your child? Now, as a parent, you're not accountable for writing measurable goals. So I don't want you to feel like, oh my gosh, now I've got to go back and get a graduate degree and learn how to write measurable IEP goals. That's not your job as a parent. So as a parent, though, I think it is important that you prioritize what you want your child working on. So you don't have to fill this template out, and you don't have to bring a measurable goal to the table. As a parent, what you can do is you can say, for this next year, the things that I think are really important for my child to learn are X, Y, Z, whatever your priorities are. And then as an IEP team, the team can craft a measurable goal. So I don't want you to feel like I'm saying every parent has to learn how to write measurable goals. But what I am saying is it's really helpful as a parent to be able to identify, yes, I figured this out, it's a measurable goal, or no, there's still some, kind of general things in here that we need to get clarified. The other thing that you can do as a parent is to bring the handy dandy template with you to the IEP meeting. And when you say, I want my child to learn, grade level sight words for this next year, and the team starts to write a goal, and if you're seeing that some of the pieces are missing, you could say, one of the things that I suggest, is that we maybe use this template and plug in the things so we make sure it's really measurable. So I don't know how comfortable you would feel doing that as a parent. That's why sometimes it's helpful to have advocates with you at the meeting so they can kind of speak and ask those kinds of questions. But let's go back to our slide and look at the template again. And like I said, if you'd like a copy of this, just write template into and Rebecca says, template, please. She has to run, but thank you. So sure thing, Rebecca, I'll put the link in there with your comment. So this could be something that you could print out, that you could bring with you. And when the team is looking at writing a goal, and like I said, it might be right there in the IEP meeting when somebody says, I think we need another goal here. So you can just start with this template and say, okay, who's going to do it? The name of the student. I think it's always nice to use the student's name, and then identify what the student's going to do. They're going to read aloud a story. So it's not going to be silent reading. It's going to be oral reading. They're going to be using a second grade basal reader. And again, as many ways and times that I can include materials that students are using in the general ed classroom, I want to do that in my goals. So because this is my way to try and get more kids included for more time in general ed classrooms. That's my other goal. So you say, okay, we want him to read aloud the story. He's going to be using the second grade basal reader. We're going to give him 20 minutes to read it out loud. And we want to give no more than 3 verbal prompts to say, okay, keep reading, because we want him to be able to do it more independently. But in this goal, we are going to give him a chance with some verbal prompts or reminders. We want him to be 90% accurate, and you might want to define this a little bit more as far as, accuracy with saying what the words are. As much detail and specifics as you can add into the goal, to me, it makes it better. The environment is his second grade classroom. Again, I want to, as much as possible, have kids performing mastering goals, working on IEP goals right there in their general ed classroom. And that, I think, is really important for us to incorporate into the goal. And then how many times? So we're going to say that we want him to be able to read this story with 90% accuracy at least 5 consecutive school days. So how many times students do that is important. So it's not just like they did it once and we go, yay, you accomplished your goal. And Donna and Veronica are with us, and Jean, they all want the template too. So cool. I'm excited when I when I make something and it's like, this is going to be helpful. So cool. But anyway, so if you're in the IEP meeting, you could actually use this template and kind of go through the steps. Now, if you put this all together, so we've got all these little pieces in the template, but then you can put it together, and it makes the measurable goal. Jason will read aloud a story from his second grade basal reader, given 20 minutes with no more than 3 verbal prompts, with 90% accuracy in his second grade classroom for 5 consecutive days. And this, looks and is a lot more measurable than some of the generic IEP goals that I often see when I'm reviewing IEPs for families. So one of the things that you can do when I post the template for you to be able to use is to go ahead and print it off and print several copies and go through your child's IEP and take one goal or more than one goal and say, I want to look, I want to see if I can figure out if we have all the components here to make a measurable IEP goal. So that's another way that you could use this handy dandy goal template that I've made for you. The other part that I wanted to just mention kind of quickly is the whole concept of short-term objectives or benchmarks. When the federal law was reauthorized in 2004, they took out the requirement that goals had to have short-term objectives. And as a teacher, I really always felt that the short-term objectives were really helpful for me because I had the annual goal, and I'll switch back off here so you can see me. So as a teacher, when I knew what the annual goal was, so 365 days from now, this is what I want the child to master. But what I would do is take that goal and break it down into at least 4 different steps. So I would think about, okay, so for this next quarter in the school year, what am I going to really emphasize and what is going to be that first step to get my student to the annual goal? So I'd have an objective for the next quarter. And then the following quarter in the school year, I would say, okay, I'm going to predict he's going to make this much progress first quarter. Second quarter, what do I want to make sure that we're working on? Third quarter, what do I want to make sure we're working on? Fourth quarter, that's going to be the last, quarter that we're going to be working to make sure that he achieves that annual goal. So now short-term objectives or benchmarks are not required in IEPs unless your child takes alternative state testing. So if your child is going to be involved in alternative testing, then there is a requirement from the federal government that your child have short-term objectives. And I really want people to break up that annual goal into smaller skills. What I see, to me, so much, which I kind of consider a cop-out, is they'll have an annual goal and they'll say they want the student to do some skill with 80% accuracy. And then their first short-term objective is that the child will do it with 50% accuracy. And then their second short-term objective is they do it with 60% accuracy. And they just break down the level of accuracy, but instead, what I would rather see, and to me is best practice, but it's not like, legally mandated for them to do, but to me it's better practice to say, use the example, we want a child to be able to verbally tell us what each capital letter is when we show them individual flashcards out of order. So what would be better is, if that's our annual goal, to learn all the letters, then the first quarter goal might be, we're just going to learn the letters in the child's first name or first name and last name. Then maybe the second quarter, we're going to take additional, maybe chunk out, 5, 10, whatever, more letters. And we write down the letters that we want the child to master in that quarter. So I'd rather see annual goals broken up into short-term objectives where they actually break up the skill, and they don't just say, he's going to be 50% accuracy, he's going to be 60% accuracy, he's going to be 80% accuracy. To me, that really doesn't meet the spirit of what short-term objectives should be. So I'm going to take a quick look here and see if we have any other questions or comments. And like I said, you can always click on that share button and then share this video to your own Facebook page, or if you're in a Facebook group with other parents, feel free to share the posts there. I do my live shows every Thursday at noon Mountain Time, and each week are different topics. Sometimes I interview professionals or parents. Sometimes I do more of a teaching lesson like this one is. The other thing I wanted to let you know is I do have an online course, which is advocacy tools that you need for your advocacy toolbox. And if you're interested in taking an online course with me and other parents, you can just type in the word course in the comment box and I can give you more information about the course. But annual goals is like one whole module that we cover in our online course, and we go into a lot more detail than just kind of our overview that we've done today on our live show. But if these are kind of specific things that you would like to learn more about, because you want to make sure that your child is successful at school and that they're getting the right services and supports that they need, that's the purpose of having parents engage in our membership group, having parents engage in our online course, so they can see that they are becoming better advocates for their children, and their children are the ones that are winning and being happier, safer, and more competent learners at school. So if that interests you, type in the word course in the comment box and I'll get you that information. So I don't see any other questions. Quite a few people interested in the template. So I'll make that up as a PDF and post the link for you. So until next Thursday at noon Mountain Time, have a wonderful weekend and a start to your week next week. And I'm Charmaine Thaner, an advocate and a public speaker whose purpose here is to help you become a more effective advocate for your child. So until next week, I will see you then. Bye for now.